what if the number of total Bitcoin is actually a lot lower than 21 million? Let's mine deep. In the early days, Bitcoin was very experimental.
It's a virtual currency which only exists on the internet, Bitcoin as it's called.
Very few people who used it in its first few years fully grasped the eventual value of the asset they were dealing with. As a result, security wasn't nearly as much of a concern. And because Bitcoin was so cheap, people were throwing around thousands of Bitcoin on a daily basis as if it were nothing. Everyone's heard of Laszlo, the guy who spent 10,000 Bitcoin on a pizza, right? But what about the guy who sold Laszlo the pizzas, Jeremy Studervant, who spent those 10,000 Bitcoin on travel expenses? What about the guy who spent 25,000 Bitcoin for a one-bedroom condo in the Trump Hotel? Or 1,000 Bitcoin on a Toyota Prius? Did all the people who made those transactions keep the keys to their Bitcoin? Or did many of them end up like this guy, who threw away a USB with 7,002 Bitcoin inside it?
Fun coupons! See that?
This combination of circumstances where people were the least cautious at the time when they were handling the most Bitcoin was the perfect storm for a lot of Bitcoin to get lost. If you don't have the private keys for a Bitcoin address, there's nothing you can do to move those coins out of that address. So all the Bitcoin that got lost in the early days is gone forever.
Oh, no.
People often say there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And while technically it is true, it's not the number that really matters. What matters is the number of available Bitcoin, which is much smaller. How much smaller? Well, there's no way to be 100% sure, but due to the Bitcoin's entire transaction history being visible on the public blockchain, we can see how many Bitcoin haven't moved in a while. Some of that Bitcoin will be held by diamond hands who just refuse to sell, but it's relatively safe to assume that Bitcoin transactions from, say, 2011 that haven't been touched since are most likely never going to move again. By analyzing the whole chain, some companies have estimated that up to 3.7 million Bitcoin will likely never see the light of day again. That's 3.7 million Bitcoin that you will never be able to buy, spend, or sell. And people are still losing coins to this day. There's only enough Bitcoin for the world's wealthiest 1% to get their hands on about 0.28 Bitcoin each. And that's assuming everyone who still has their coins is willing to sell them. ETFs alone have nearly 1 million coins already, and between Michael Saylor and his company MicroStrategy, over 200,000 more coins are under lock and key, just in the United States alone. So why should you care? Bitcoin today has evolved a lot since the early days. With technologies like seed phrases and fancy hardware wallets, it's easier than ever to custody your own Bitcoin. You can even do it with your fingerprint now. As people become more familiar with Bitcoin, hearing about lost Bitcoin will become as rare as hearing about lost gold. People rarely lose their gold because they understand its value, and most of the gold ever mined is still within human control. But that doesn't mean it will never happen. Some hard drives last only a few years. So what happens to the Bitcoin on old drives? We may never know. But what is clear is this: Bitcoin's value comes in large part from its scarcity, and it's even more scarce than people realize. So if you do get some, make sure you custody it safely, because you never know how much you'll need it in the future. Don't miss Hugh Hendry Backstage. How did Bitcoin change your life?
It hasn't changed my life.
Why not?
Because I have enlightenment. I pursue happiness. Why? Like, how would Bitcoin make me happier? I've got plenty of money, and actually I don't have any Bitcoin, but
You don't have any Bitcoin.
do you have?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Well, you're like, where is it?
I'm
Is
not
it-
gonna
is it
tell
on
you
your
where it
phone?
is.
Is it on your phone?
No.
Is it? You have digital money?
Yeah, I have digital. So do you not
I've got lots of digital money. It's my Apple phone. Like, I buy coffees with it all the time.
Do you believe in Bitcoin?
What does that mean, believe? I believe in me.
I mean, explain your logic.
Clearly, I am an existentialist, okay?
Okay.
God is dead. I'm sorry, folks. There are no rules. You're on your own, okay? And so I guess my view on Bitcoin is that it sounds like a church gathering. It's a belief system.
And so you don't think that there's a problem with the fiat money?
There are problems everywhere, honey. There are problems everywhere. I keep saying we're stacking problem on problem on problem on problem, okay? I'm just saying that if I've got to come back to try and say something modestly encouraging, I can conceive of allocating some of my wealth, my financial wealth, into Bitcoin. But let me tell you, if I was doing it, let's see if I can antagonize you further, I'd buy futures. I'd buy Bitcoin futures. I don't need I don't need semiconductors or whatever.
But what would be the solution to these problems?
So solutions and I'm being serious. I'm being absurdly serious, but serious. So there's clearly a technology. There's a platform. There's plumbing. There's a lot of intelligence within the system. Payment systems, identification, processing, confirmation. And actually, I was saying on the stage earlier that we've probably spent, as a society, in the architecture of banks and finance and the arrangement of the economy, all of the emphasis has been on risk mitigation. What is risk? Risk is, Isabella, I don't know, you could be risky, right? And I spend all my time fearful about having an engagement with you, okay? And actually, what this, the microculture and the embedded technology, what it brings to the fore is hey, listen, to move forward, maybe we have to concentrate on something else, something more liberating. Risk control is not liberating, it's necessary, but it's not liberating, okay? And what blockchain rather offers is trust. It's let's trust each other. What if I could enable a system where we could hit it off immediately and you're boom, yeah, you match. Imagine we would just go boom, digital passport, I own all these assets, it's confirmed on my blockchain, and their system goes, yeah, you're right, boom, done. It would take me 10 seconds. Okay, so you would be enabling commerce. I would trust you, you would trust me. And therefore credit would be facilitated, and credit is the oxygen which potentially creates prosperity. And at the margin, we're not creating enough prosperity because money just now is broken, and it's broken by overemphasizing risk and not encouraging trust.